this community and in the lives of many individuals. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Tisdall, Mayor of the City of Evanston, do hereby proclaim November 25th, 2013, as Red and White Day in Evanston, Illinois, in honor of their significant and profound impact. The Evanston North Shore Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated continues to make on this community and in celebration of their 100th year anniversary. Would you please come forward? Open the town meeting. Now I would like to open the special Evanston Town Board meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the October 21st, 2013 Town Board meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next is citizen comment. I don't know if these are on the town board. Excellent. Township citizen comment sign-up sheet. Alderman Rainey?
Madam Mayor, I hate to do this, but don't we have to go into the town board?
All right. You did it. You're right.
I'm sorry.
City. All right. Township clerk, would you call the names?
Trustee Rainey. Here. Trustee Burris. Here. Trustee Fisk. Here. Trustee Braithwaite. Here. Trustee Wynn. Here. Trustee Wilson. Here. Trustee Tisdall.
Here.
Trustee Holmes.
Here.
Trustee Tindem. Here. Trustee Grover. Here. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. The minutes are approved. And next comes citizen comment. We have one citizen signed up, Betty Esther. I hope it won't turn into that.
Good evening, boards of trustees. My name is Betty Esther. I stay at 2031 Church Street. I am an elector of the Evanston Township. I have some questions concerning the budget that is being proposed tonight, and these questions are: why is there no fund in the GA budget or the town budget for the supervisor or tax assessor? Question number one. Number two, how will the supervisor or tax assessor get paid if the town organization is continued? Why is the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund is increased by $4,008 in the GA fund when the executive and the supervisor has no salary in the budget? And in the funds, in the town fund, it shows a decrease for that item. Why was the contract service, which was for YOU in the amount of $70,557, cut out when it has been traditionally been to fund that organization from the GA fund? How is it that the GA and town fund for the fiscal year 2013, a budget that will be approved tonight, and the 2014 budget has a deficit when they have been traditionally balanced by using funds from the respective fund balance? In your comments or summary of your budget, you stated that there is 170 clients that you're currently that would be funded. I hear it's 186. The amount proposed in the budget does not cover the costs for 170 or 150 clients. What is the number of clients used to come up with the figure in the budget? On the community purchase service in the town fund, who gets the $164,950? On the truth in taxation, which there was a meeting before you and the council that talks about things being transparent, who in the past, those people that receive fund under this here, the community service, have been laid out and specified the amount. Who is getting this money this time? Also, on what did you cut out the summer youth program, and you said that it would be funded in the city budget. Under what department in the city budget was the summer youth program placed to receive funds for its expenditure? Those questions and the budget need to reflect those issues. If you're going to do truth in taxation, you have to show what is supposed to be given out and to who, and all of the other questions answered. You cannot go forward, even though you is saying that the vote is going to come back in the township, it's going to be, the referendum will ultimately result in the township going away. We do not have crystal ball. If you have a crystal ball, I would like to know to borrow it, because I need my future to be told. The only other way that it could be is that you have talked to over 8,000 people here in the city, and they have said that they would vote yes for demolishing the township. I don't think that has happened. So there need to be a salary in the budget for the township supervisor and the tax assessor, as those are jobs that would be needed. Those positions would have to be filled, and they would be needed to be paid. They would not be asked, and I would not ask them to work as a volunteer during this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Esther. Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor, I think some of those questions were excellent questions, and I would hope that before our next meeting, when we're just introducing the township budget tonight, could we get answers to some of them? And Betty, if you have your, where did she go? Could you make sure we get a copy of your speech?
And Alderman,
Yeah, and make sure he gets it.
Yes.
Thank you.
and Trustee Rainey, I took pretty copious notes. So what we'll do is we'll have a budget memorandum as we would for the city
That's good.
budget.
That's
We'll have that for Human Services on Monday the 2nd. So, Madam Chair, members of the town board, our plan would be to have you introduce this evening, to be referred back to the Human Services Committee for discussion, and then come back to the town board on another special meeting on the 9th of December. But we'll have answers to all of Ms. Esther's questions.
Thank you. Next is public hearing, proposed fiscal year 2014 Evanston Township budget. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or comments? Trustee Grover?
I move introduction of the township budget for 2014.
Thank you. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded to introduce the township budget for 2014.
Question, I'm sorry.
Alderman, Trustee Holmes.
I was going to say, does that need to include that it will be sent back to Human Services where we can have our discussion? Just to make sure that people know that we're going to discuss this in depth, because there are other questions as well. But we'll save them for Monday night in the Human Services Committee. Sorry.
I amend my motion to approve introduction of the proposed fiscal year 2014 Evanston Township budget with a referral of the budget back to Human Services for deliberation at our next meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Rainey.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move approval. Whoops. I'd like to move approval of the change in the township's fiscal year. This is the second reading, and it's for action tonight.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the change in the fiscal year for the township. Trustee Grover.
Do we need to vote on the first motion?
We do. We do. The second motion came in a little faster than I might have wished. So let's vote on the first motion, which was Trustee Grover's, to approve the introduction of the township budget and to refer it to the Human Services Committee on Monday for further discussion. Trustee Rainey.
We treat this as a consent and deal with them both at the same time.
That is fine. We'll deal with both
I would move
motions.
that we do that.
Does anyone else have any comments they wish to make? All right. Township Clerk, would you call the roll on both motions to introduce the ordinance and to change the township's fiscal year?
Trustee Rainey.
Aye.
Trustee Burris. Trustee Fisk. Trustee Braithwaite. Trustee Wynn. Trustee Wilson. Trustee Tisdall.
Aye.
Trustee Holmes.
Aye.
Trustee Tindem. Trustee Grover.
Yes.
10-0.
The motion passes. Trustee Grover.
Second.
We only have other business, and I believe there is no other business. So it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that ends the township meeting. Do we need to call the roll again?
You have to convene back to the council.
All right. We are reconvening as the Evanston City Council. And the first item on the agenda is the mayor's public announcements. It is National Drunk and Drug Driving Prevention Month. And I have one other announcement. I wanted you to know that the Active Transportation Alliance gave the city an award attaining the bicycle-friendly community silver level status. And I would like to thank Suzette Robinson, the Director of Public Works, Sat Nagar, the Senior Design and Construction Manager, and Rajiv Dahal, the Senior Traffic Engineer, for getting us this honor. And Mayor Emanuel got an award, and the City of Evanston got an award at this event. So I would like to thank the staff. They did us proud. City Manager, do you have public announcements?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. First, a reminder, at your next meeting on Monday, December the 9th, at the beginning of the evening, we're going to have a special celebration commemorating formally the City of Evanston's 150th anniversary. We have invited back every living former elected official in the City of Evanston, about 50 individuals that are former aldermen, former city clerks, former mayors. We've heard from a little more than half of them who are going to come back and join us for a commemoration of the city's 150th anniversary. There will be a special presentation made to each of the former elected officials. We'll have a small reception, and we'll also take a photograph. So that's coming up on the 9th of December. And again, we've heard from lots of folks we have not heard from, and I'd like to thank Kate Todd of my office. She's done a great job of tracking down many of the former aldermen who have lost a little touch with the city. So hopefully we'll have a nice turnout for that event on December 9th. Next, I'd like to make a formal announcement that I've appointed Joe McCrae, the new director of our Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. Let's give him a hand. Joe, if you could just come up to the podium. In addition to taking on this new responsibility, he will continue as one of our 2 deputy city managers. Joe, do you want to just say a few words? I think you'll be back at a future meeting to talk about reorganization of the department.
Correct. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Clerk Green, and City Manager Bob Quitz, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to continue to serve this great community. I am fortunate to work with a very talented staff, and looking forward to all that we can accomplish toward the benefit of our residents here in the city of Evanston. I will be back just to give you an update on some of the reorganization activities that we will be working on going forward. And again, I just appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve at the city of Evanston. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joe. We also were going to do a 311 update, but I think given the time and other matters before the council, we'll put that off. But I did want to recognize Erica Storley. Erica, if you could come up for just a brief moment. I've asked Erica to take on the role of deputy city manager in the city manager's office, so she will be replacing Joe McCrae's duty in the manager's office as well. So we're very pleased to welcome Erica.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Green, Manager Bob Quitz, it's my privilege to take on this role. I have been privileged to work here for almost 9 years now, so I'm very excited about the work to come and to continue to do the great things that we've been doing. So thank you, I appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you longer. Thank you.
And with these appointments, we will have a net reduction of 1 position in the city manager's office. So we will not then go back and hire now behind Erica. We will reduce a position in the manager's office. So thank you, Erica, and thank you, Joe, for taking on these important assignments. Next, I'd like to introduce Jim Mayworm, our Assistant Director of Public Works. It's that time of year where you're going to hear a lot from Jim now over the next few months. He's here to talk about changes to our streets cleaning schedule, holiday trash collection, and snow parking. I imagine you'll do all of that, won't you?
In a very brief sort of synopsis. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Clerk Green, members of the City Council. Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind our residents that, of course, this coming Thursday is Thanksgiving Day, and there'll be no trash, recycling, or yard waste collection on Thanksgiving Day. Solid waste resumes 1 day after on Friday, and recycling will be collected on Saturday. Due to the late leaf drop, we are in fact extending street cleaning and yard waste collections 1 more week. So starting the week of December 2nd, we are asking all of our residents to please continue to follow the alternate street parking so that we can make 1 quick sweep throughout the entire city to try to clean up all the last remaining leaves and yard waste debris that's left there. We're also asking if there are any special circumstances, such as special postings or locations that are difficult and challenging for people to move their cars, to notify us of that by December 1st, and then we can go ahead and do a special posting to try to accommodate those special situations. Also wanted to mention, and how appropriate, we had some snow this morning, that our snow parking restrictions go into effect as of December 1st. Again, just to remind everybody, a snow route parking ban is after 2 inches of snowfall, and then snow emergency is after 4 inches. And one last little reminder, our snow emergency fines have increased to $55, and our towing relocations have increased to $150. So let's hope for a light winter. Any questions for anyone?
Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayworm. In extending the street cleaning to December 6th, are we keeping the 3-week rotation of those streets that are swept every 3 weeks, or are we just assuming it's going to be every
Yeah, we're actually going to try to do everything within the week.
Within the week, so.
Because it does fall very odd in terms of our 3-week cycle.
Yeah.
What we do recognize is that there are sections of the city in which the sweeping technically ended 2 weeks ago. So those are areas we already have anticipated that we're going to have to really get into and do some cleaning. And there's other sections that, sweeping was just last week. So that may not be as heavily impacted. And honestly, if, weather conditions continue, we'll still be looking for special circumstances as December rolls along.
Well, will you be sending out notice via text and so forth about the additional street sweeping and need to move cars and so forth?
And yeah, I would anticipate the text would say something like, at a voluntary basis, please, use alternate side parking because our parking restrictions do end November 30th. So we can't really legally.
All right, so this is voluntary, so it's moving
Yes.
cars so that you can allow your street to be cleaned and, all right, thank you.
Mr. Mayworm, I have one question for you. Some municipalities are moving to encouraging residents to mulch the leaves and just chop them up and leave them on the lawn. Have we looked into that?
Oh, absolutely. That's something that's ongoing, and we do encourage all of our residents to do that. Technically speaking, we, Public Works, do not collect residential leaves. We simply sweep the streets. And so people are encouraged to mulch, to compost, and if, all else fails, bag the leaves. But that's...
All else seems to be failing.
This year in particular. Yeah, mulching is a terrific way to dispose of them.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayworm, what are we doing about texting? I think we had a plan to text to residents.
Yes.
Ms. Storley,
I'm sorry.
I think that's what she was trying to tell you as she walked up.
I was just going to mention that the street sweeping text notifications that normally go out to the people who have signed up for them will continue to go out. They will just be recommending a voluntary compliance as opposed to a required one.
Thank you. And that concludes city manager announcements.
Thank you. City Clerk, do you have communications?
No communications this evening, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Then next on the agenda is citizen comment. Each one of you will have 3 minutes, and please state your name and address. I'm going to call the first 4 speakers: Junad Risky, Jean Lindwall, Alan Drebin, and Katie Stallcup.
I'm going to summarize some of the things I said in AP&W. It appears some public officials and senior staff are more interested, maybe in their own agendas, than managing some of the city operations. I think an excellent example is the $1.3 million township budget, when we have a water department, basically utilities sitting on the lake that's $150 million, that appears to be operating in the red and have major problems. A 10% water bill increase is on the agenda tonight, with really no justification other than at first it was capital. Now it's basically we're going to need the money for revenue for the bonds, basically. The water department didn't even present its capital, really, during this thing. And some public officials want to build a $26 million tank or replace a tank that sits on Northwestern's campus. Basically, when a consultant report suggested $4 million, that will cause the water bills to go up 20%. For the next probably 20 to 30 years, possibly. And this is not an acceptable thing when the consultant recommended $4 million to do the work, which would be 1/6, about 3% of the cost. So basically, we as taxpayers should not have to suffer like that. Water rate payers, but the same thing, really. The city has never justified the $3 million it takes from the water fund, which continues to do that. Of course, the city has refused to tell me its profit of the water fund because there is no profit. And from the customers, Northwest, the Water Commission, and Skokie really are not profitable operations to the city. And we Evanston residents are subsidizing those operations. While the city claims not, I believe it is when you consider depreciation and other things. 6 months ago, I pointed out the problems with the transponders. I noticed on a website of one of the aldermen in South Evanston, some of her residents were experiencing high bills. The city was supposed to inform residents of the issues of what was going on with the transponders, but never did. I'm not going to go into it since most of you know about it. I'm going to just summarize 2 other departments. One is the fire department. I do appreciate tonight one of the aldermen did say there was an issue with the capital there at the kitchen, and that needs to be revisited. But I feel that there's some attitude in the fire department. I noticed today, firefighters park their personal vehicles in the fire station. And when I asked about this, apparently they're allowed to do this. And I think the city needs to revisit this. I also have been told of an incident at the Ecology Center, because we did talk about parks and recreation tonight. It is somewhat of a personnel matter, but it's also a question of the operation of the center that has concerned me, since I do visit that center quite a bit. I think there are some problems with the management of some of these recreation programs. On our Capitol tour, we talked about several $100,000 for quote-unquote studies. Here again, to me, that doesn't show me that we have strong programming going on in that department, and it has some problems. It needs to be reorganized, and there appears to me the city manager was talking about this $1 million in capital slush fund he wants for things like this, which I find very troubling as a taxpayer. We need to start operating the city in a more professional manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean Lindwall, 625 Library Place. Please deny the time extension for the 708 church plan development. We learned tonight at P&D that Focus Development does not have a current option to purchase the property that's in effect today. Plan developments typically have 1 year to begin construction. This one started with almost 5 years, and now an additional 3-year extension is being requested. The City Council chose to grant extraordinary site development allowances and exceptions substantially exceeding those otherwise permitted based on a list of public benefits that may no longer be relevant. Conditions are very different now than they were in 2009. Cook County tax assessment practices have changed, which impact the revenue projections for the original development. The Washington National TIF will be ended before the development goes forward, which was one of the significant public benefits identified, and the revenue that was going to go into that fund to support the parking garage and improvements within the TIF district. The Church Street streetscape is complete. Fountain Square and the Sherman and Orrington streetscape improvements are being planned and will likely be completed before construction begins. As noted in the staff memo, the plan development and special use apply to the property, not to the developer. This is particularly relevant since Focus does not have a current purchase option in effect, just an understanding with the ownership. What happens if the owner and Focus decide to market the property and the planned development to someone new? Rewarding Focus for past successes is not a reason for the extension. This extension will reduce the likelihood that a new, more appropriate development proposal for 708 Church will come forward in the near future. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Alan Drebin. I live at 807 Davis Street, and I'm also going to talk about this proposal for the extension on 708 Church Street. I'm a professor in the Kellogg School of Management, and so I'm going to talk about this as a business proposition. And it's a lousy deal for the city. Even if Focus owned this, by the way, which they don't, and that's what makes this even more puzzling, that it's a heads they win, tails we lose. Because what happens is, if times are bad, which apparently that's their excuse for the last 5 years of not doing anything, then they don't do anything. And so we don't get a project. If times are good, then they will build it, but they'll make a lot of profit. So it's like an option. You all know what options are. That gives you the right to buy it, but you don't have to buy it. And so we can't force them to buy it. And as Ms. Lindwall mentioned, the rights to this, the special use permit goes with the property, not with the owner. And the puzzling thing is we don't even know who that owner is. So here you would be giving special rights to a land trust number so-and-so that we don't even know who those owners are. And in fact, at the P&D meeting, they were asked who that is, and they apparently didn't know. I'll also mention, and because what's relevant is just the extension, people don't want to hear about all the special benefits that were given to this project, but it's on page 230 of your packet tonight. This is the proposed ordinance, and with all the whereases, and it says, whereas Section 6-3-6-4D of the City Code provides that no plan development as a form of special use shall be valid for a period longer than 1 year unless a longer time is requested and granted by the City Council. Now, of course, you have the right to grant a longer period. But I think that you should be aware of the fact that if there is an ordinance, that it has some meaning. And I think some people have said, well, this is only an extension, therefore we ought to approve what the City Council did 5 years ago. That was 3 city councils ago. But we don't care about whoever passed this ordinance 6-3-6-4D and so on. It seems to me that that's very important. Finally, I would say that this location is a very desirable one. It's right in the heart of the city, and I don't think you really need great incentives to encourage buildings there. And I think that if you turn this down, you'll get some more proposals, and I think one of the problems that we have is by granting this now, you're actually discouraging development, because others who are planning to build downtown, and there have been other 12 buildings downtown, but others who come in may have another parcel want to build on, will say, well, there's 218 units plus commercial property proposed there, and we don't want to build because we're not going to be able to compete against that.
Mr. Driven, I do need you to wrap up.
To this one company. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Katie Stalkup. I live at 144 Greenwood Street. I'm here as a board member of the Southeast Evanston Association, and I would like to read the SEA statement on the proposed 708 Church Street project and the request for an extension of the deadline. I apologize for people who heard this statement just an hour or two ago. The Southeast Evanston Association believes the proposed development at 708 Church Street does not address the many concerns of our community, and we do not agree with the request for the extension of the deadline. Specifically, the developers request enormous zoning variances far in excess of any that have been requested by other downtown Evanston projects. The proposed building will dwarf other structures in town. The proposed size does not reflect the character and needs of the city of Evanston. The building only reflects the profit motive of the developers. The City Council should not be in the business of guaranteeing the profitability of individual projects. Instead, the City Council should focus on respecting and upholding the zoning ordinance. Number 2, the proposed development adds 218 dwelling units to the downtown area. Concerns about traffic flow and loading berths have not been addressed or ameliorated. Number 3, the proposed development provides less retail space than currently exists and no office space. SEA feels that this design will have a negative impact on the downtown community and the city's long-term economic health. And number 4, the developers offer no real public benefits in exchange for the massive zoning ordinances or zoning allowances they are requesting. Contributions to the city's affordable housing fund are mandated by law and thus cannot be considered a benefit. In summary, the many problems with this development have not gone away. We urge the Planning and Development Committee to reject the project and to reject the extension. This was a bad project in 2008. It is a bad project in 2013, and it will still be a bad project in 2016. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tom Snyder, Glenn Gray, Joyce Hill, and Joan Taylor.
Good evening. I've been a long-time fan of Evanston, as you have been. I graduated from Northwestern 51 years ago. And after finishing graduate school, I've been a university administrator and retired. And the changes to Evanston, as well as the wonderful place that existed when I was here, enticed me back from out of state 5 years ago. And at that time, you granted a 5-year planning period to a developer. Some people on the board this evening are saying, hey, we're not talking about this particular building and its benefits again. All we're doing is talking about zoning, or not zoning, but planning extension. That's it. I think it's impossible to talk about extending a planning period without talking about what's going to be extended and in what environment is it taking place. Evanston has radically changed in the last 5 years, and some of you have been on the board after we heard some of the impact studies, if there were any, 5 years ago. We really need to slow down, look about the future of Evanston and the impact on all of Evanston, not just downtown, and have impact studies that reflect the new technologies that have come into being in the last 6, 7 years, as well as the culture. We need impact studies on traffic, fire, police, water, wind shear, tunneling, wind tunneling, as far as displacement of the businesses right now, displacement of business administrators on the second floor. I urge you to reject this extension.
Thank you.
Hi, Glenn Gray from 708 Davis. Thank you again. 807 Davis Street. Confused. Madam Mayor, City Council members, city officials, thank you again for allowing me to come before you to speak. I'm going to pick up where I left off before. And I talked a little bit about why are we here? And I said the answer was obvious, that we all care. And I'll pick up where I left off. I talked a little bit about the process that started before, when we were told about how wonderful this development was going to be. We were shown pictures of fantastic redevelopment that encouraged everybody at the time to say, gosh, we're having a completely new Fountain Square, we're having all new buildings, the whole downtown thing was going to be changed, and all that ended up was that we have the one building on the end of the block. In the theme of what do we care about, after all, Mr. Anderson cares about one thing, and that's Mr. Anderson's pocketbook. We, all of us here, on the other hand, care about our community. It is our job, your job, to make this and all developments be the best they can be. Remember the 13 months of community meetings, workshops, charrettes, that we all gathered to make recommendations for changes to the proposed development? Countless hours, hundreds of people with good ideas from our community that were simply all ignored. Remember Mr. Anderson's attitude towards all the hard work from our community? Well, I do. Many of you weren't there. No, not one single change requested by the community was incorporated in the design. Not one. His attitude was take it or leave it. 13 months, not one change. Take it or leave it. It is now time to finally leave it. Why are we here? I am certainly, I read that part for you. Sorry I had to skip. If Mr. Anderson intends to build the building as proposed, reject the 15-year-old modern dinosaur. If he intends to change it along the way, a little here, a little there, try to glide under the radar, our watch, your watch, then he's not building what he proposed, and you must demand he return with a well-conceived, entirely new plan. This decision should be quite easy. After all, we know why we are here, because we care. Now show us why you are here. Vote against the extensions, stop the tower, save Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce, yes.
I wasn't sure about the order.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here following a recent precedent, seeking answers to questions regarding Evanston's unsolved murders. This week would have been Keith Tucker's birthday. On November 23rd, he would have been 43 years old. While I can't speak for his family on his unsolved case, I will speak for mine. One of the now 36 unsolved murders in Evanston was my nephew, Marcus Davis. As of today, his assailant is still uncaptured, thus unanswered and considered unsolved. No information has been given to my family in regards to ongoing investigation attempts. I repeat, none. Indeed, there is much speculation that has been the subject that has also created much conjecture. The urban legend of ongoing family feuds is the most used catchphrase that's attributed to these events of conjecture. But this is not the only issue at hand. One additional issue that I have where it's cause for concern is that how past shootings over this summer that have occurred in broad daylight on governmental property within the city of Evanston, and there were duly noted, positively identified so-called persons of interest, yet not one viable arrest has been made. Thus, the instance also remains unsolved, unanswered for public awareness or satisfaction, and the city voted most viable for living. But yet, in other instances, there is individuals who are or have been apprehended where not one shot was fired. Numerous charges are vehemently assessed against certain individuals. I guess justice doesn't always mean that the bad guys go to jail. It just means someone somehow pays for a crime. There is also growing concern and question of if there is an obvious conflict of interest that needs to be answered in a person's capacity to perform their duties with integrity in the office in which they seat when they are so close to issues at hand. The issue seems not to be addressed or purposely overlooked in matters regarding ongoing investigation attempts. How that conflict of interest has brought up issues of professional standing being utilized to even lodge what might be considered threats from their seat. This question also adds to the type of conjecture that dangerously teeters on the grounds of malicious prosecution and infringements of one's possible violation of their inalienable citizens' rights and their right to return to society, a city voted most livable where there are no second chance programs available to create a most livable atmosphere, but consistent media coverage and redundant and unrecanted reports when proven unfounded. A city that obviously blind to becoming most livable within practicing such efforts, thus clear and free from any real rights to being called most livable.
I do need you to wrap up. I'm sorry.
But I will say this. I found solace in the old saying that I often hear. It's an old Native American saying that says, for every one finger that points at someone else, they should remember that there's at least three pointing back at them. So in this voted most livable city known as Evanston, I guess the answer to these questions lies in what the actual questions are. Not only how is this city being run, but who's running the city.
Thank you.
My name is Joan Taylor, and I live at 1860 Sherman Avenue. I represent the Evanston Mental Health Board. As you know, the board members are deeply concerned about the welfare of Evanston citizens. We're also citizens and taxpayers in Evanston, and we're concerned about costs. So tonight I wanted to talk about the funding, the mental health program, and how it's a great investment. So far this year, mental health agencies that are funded have served 5,279 clients. Here's a few examples. The Moran Center, which works with troubled youth and gives them support to be successful in school. Last year, 94% of their 85 clients who were on probation, supervision, or detention were able to successfully abide by the terms of the order, thus staying out of trouble, saving cost of enforcement officers' time. The North Shore Senior Services aided 1,700 low-income older Evanston residents to stay safely in their homes, saving thousands of dollars of Medicaid money for nursing homes. Peer Services provides counseling for drug and alcohol addiction. One of their programs, which is highly dependent on city funding, serves people who have both substance abuse and mental health problems. Last year, of the 40 Evanston clients served, 83% participated in 12-step program at the end of the year. One of the programs that will be funded only if the additional money is appropriated is the YOU program at Chute Elementary School. They work with young children to prepare them to be successful in life. YOU has asked for an additional one-time grant of $30,000 to maintain a program that would be cut in 2014 because of federal government sequester. It's staff understanding that the federal money will be reinstated in 2015. We urge you to provide the funds requested by the Mental Health Board. We're requesting $829,000 to be utilized by 15 agencies. The difference between our request and the staff appropriation is $81,000. That's still less than your appropriation in 2008 by $51,000. Finally, as you look to improving services currently offered through the township, please consider investing more heavily in the fine programs that are provided by our outstanding agencies. Thank you. Because I had a lot of numbers I'd like to give you.
Thank you. Next is Annette Rosier, Peggy Tarr, and Junad Risky.
My name is Annette Braden Rosier, residing at 907 Sherman Avenue, apartment 202. This issue appears probably petty and compared to all the others that were brought forth here. It affects but my immediate block, and I'm speaking for my neighbors and myself. It's about a business that has been allowed to continue making noise for 2 years, and I believe it shouldn't even be in this neighborhood. I moved back to 907 Sherman Avenue this May, this year. I moved back to Evanston after 5 years, and I love the city. This is by no means a quiet neighborhood. I live close to Main Street. It's the intersection of Sherman and Main. It's by no means a quiet neighborhood. Noise is coming from street traffic and pedestrians. But it is the indoor noise from one of the businesses, it's called Revolution Spin, that has been ongoing and particularly during. This business offers high-intensity cycling boot camps, 60 to 90 minutes in length. Their loud music combined with the yelling of the instructors is a very annoying mix, especially on weekend mornings. And our thin window glass does not provide any protection. And during the summer months, you want to keep the windows open. I live right across from this business. I initially considered even joining the club, but with $20 one session, I immediately adopted that interest. I was shocked when I heard that neighbors have been complaining about this business over 2 years. Police and aldermen have confirmed the inappropriate noise, but and have asked them to turn it down or tone down the noise, but they have not been responding, or only at the time of the presence of the police, and then it went right back up. I'm not sure what ordinance needs to be enforced. I'm not sure what entity needs to be here, maybe not even in the right place, needs to be contacted to enforce any requests for toning down the noise. But I don't understand why a business like this is allowed to arrogantly dismiss every complaint that has been brought to their door why they are allowed to be rude to their neighbors. There's a kickboxing studio right across around my corner. They don't produce any of this kind of noise. And all the fitness studios I know, and I have been a member of, are in strip malls or in business areas where you can't hear anything. And why? Because the windows are thick and don't allow any sound to come through. And actually all that needs to be, I think all they need to do is to soundproof their windows, but they haven't been willing to do that. And I think it's time that someone in the city, I'm not sure who that would be, would approach them and ask them to be kind to their neighbors and enforce and soundproof their windows. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
My name is Peggy Tarr. I live at 907 Sherman, so I'm actually a neighbor of Annette's, and I'm before the council again to complain about the disturbing noise from Revolution Spin, which is located at 904 Sherman. I'm going to try to cut out some of this since Annette addressed much of it, but since the fall of 2011, I and others complained to the city council. You know, our Fourth Ward Alderman Don Wilson, the police department, instructors and managers of Revolution Spin, as well as the company that manages the building in which Revolution Spin is located. I've looked at the city, I'm not sure whether it's referred to as the ordinance or the code, referring to noise, that forbids noises that disturbs others between certain hours. I and others have been told over and over again by the Evanston Police Department, and I want to say I'm not faulting them, that the city ordinance does not forbid Revolution Spin from making noise during permitted hours. But interestingly, the ordinance can forbid persons from making noise on the street at any time. I'm not going to read the ordinance completely, but it does say that yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, blah, 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 between certain hours is not permitted, but then it also adds to that, or at any time. I'm not sure why there should be an ordinance that makes a difference as to how the noise is projected onto the street, whether the person is actually on the street or whether the noise is projected on the street from inside a building. On November 19th, in response to receiving complaints about noise, Alderman Wilson went to Revolution Spin and requested that the sound, which included music and loud shouting, be lowered. The noise was lowered while he was present, but the next night the noise was loud again. On November 24th, when I couldn't stand it anymore, I complained to the Evanston Police Department about the noise in my apartment from Revolution Spin. An officer came out, went into Revolution Spin, and told me afterwards that he told the instructor he could hear the noise when he arrived and requested that they turn the sound down. A police report would be written. The noise went back up as soon as he drove away. I discovered an article written in 2010 where neighbors east of the Central Street Metro station complained about the volume of the Metro announcements. According to the article, Alderman Grover attended the neighborhood discussion and mediated community concerns, and Metro changed the volume. I'm not quite sure how to finish this. As Annette has said too, we've complained and no response from Revolution Spin. I've actually had to go to court because of Revolution Spin, because they were making noise at 6 a.m. in the morning, which was against the ordinance. I'm really tired. All I can say is I'm begging you to find a way to make them do something, either amending the ordinance. If you can have an ordinance that talks about the noise that individuals can make out on the street, there should be something to forbid the noise from coming out of a building and onto the street. Okay, now on a positive note, I'm going to end.
I need you to wrap up.
Yeah, well, I'm going to end on a positive note. When I came before, I was asking also in consideration of seniors that the Jewel store put the bench back into a protected area. I did write to their headquarters again And I also spoke with Alderman Nguyen, and I spoke with the Senior Services Coordinator. Well, I received several calls, and I saw today the bench has been put back into a protected area. So whoever helped, thank you very much from our senior hearts.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak quickly on a non-agenda topic. The non-agenda topic really is an issue with the water system in the downtown area, because I've been listening to what you've been talking about on this project, and it interests me. As some of you know, the city did fire flow studies in the downtown, and they're quite old. Are these studies updated? I mean, we're not talking about wind shear here or other issues that you approve these projects on. You're tearing up the streets in the downtown because I know you have fire flow problems. And I know some of the buildings you've recently allowed to be hooked up to some of these old pipes that are 100 years old in different parts of town. These buildings have been, new developments here have been hooked up to 100-year-old pipes. So I think the citizens should be quite concerned about what's going on here, because when you have a fire and you start turning on the pumps in these buildings to take the water up, and in a high rise, what's going to happen? You can do what you should. It's a hydraulic issue, and you'll see what happens if those pipes are inadequate or there's problems. You won't have water. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes citizen comment. Alderman Rainey, could we have the consent agenda, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry for the delay. The consent agenda begins with the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of October 21. The Administration Public Works Committee met this evening and request you approve the following. City of Evanston payroll through October 20 in the amount of $2,716,843.02. The city bills through November 12 in the amount of $4,405,638.25. Credit card activity, am I reading the right page? I'm reading the wrong thing. I'm sorry. Wait. Just wait. I'm sorry, Mike. I have this? All right. All right, let's see. We're going to start over again. I was reading the November 11th consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the special city council meeting of October 26, the regular meeting of October 28, the regular meeting of November 11, and the regular meeting of November 18. The Administration Public Works Committee met this evening and asked you to approve the payroll through November 3 in the amount of $2,606,763.24. The City of Evanston bills through November 26, $3,239,717.82. We ask your approval for the purchase of water treatment chemicals. There are 5 vendors. One is Usalco in the amount of $192,330.40. That's for alum. Alexander Chemical Corp. In the amount of $40,624 to supply chlorine. Key Chemical in the amount of $155,700 to supply fluoride. Polydyne Inc. Chemical on Chemical Plant Road in Riceboro, Georgia, in the amount of $21,520 to supply polymer, and Caris Corporation in the amount of $96,320 to supply blended phosphate. The total amount is $506,494. We ask your approval of a contract with Tank Industry Consultants for the North and South Standpipe Rehab Engineering Services in the amount not to exceed $141,720. We ask your approval also for the purchase of hardware and installation services from Dell in the amount of $134,708.29 to implement a virtual desktop environment and replace 100 desktop computers throughout the city. We ask your approval also for the purchase of insurance renewals. It includes property excess liability and excess workers' compensation and crime, and also cyber liability insurance for fiscal year 2014 in the amount of $544,942. We ask your approval also of Resolution 67R13, which authorizes the manager to sign a notification and conditions of grant award to fund the long-term care ombudsman program. $27,339 will be reimbursed by the Age Options Grant Award for the program, which costs a total of $115,278. The committee asks your approval also for Phase 2 engineering agreements for the Dempster Street Traffic Signal Modernization and Coordination Program. We'll sign an agreement with IDOT and preliminary engineering services agreement with Hampton, Lenzini, and Renwick, Inc. in the amount of $68,122.37. We ask your approval also for a local agency agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for construction of the Safe Routes to School program. This will be in the amount federal aid Safe Route to School program grant in the amount of $249,862. Approval is also requested for Resolution 70R13, approving the fiscal year 2014 budget of the City of Evanston. The total amount of the budget is $254,627. And let me start over. This is such a large number, I can't even speak. $254,627,610. It's for action tonight, was introduced previously. We ask your approval to introduce Ordinance 130-013, which amends the city code relating to the city water works system, charges, rates, fees, and penalties. This has to do with a 10% water rate increase. It is for introduction only tonight. For introduction also is amending the city code relating to the sanitation service charge for 95-gallon containers. It is being increased to $17.95 per month for the 95-gallon cart. We ask your approval to introduce the one-way east traffic during Orrington School drop-off and pickup hours on Monticello Place between Orrington Avenue and the First Alley West. Introduction is also requested for Ordinance 132-013, authorizing the city to borrow funds from the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency Public Water Supply Loan Program. The ordinance will authorize the city to borrow up to $2,300,000. Ordinance 100-013 is for action tonight and amends the city code related to fees and costs for collection of unpaid fines. This is for those fines who have been left unpaid for 35 days or more. We ask your approval also for Ordinance 124-013, permitting issuance of a Class M liquor license to In Grape Company, LLC, at 828 Davis. Under Planning and Development, I have a feeling this is off the consent agenda, which would be Resolution 64R13. I will remove from the consent agenda. Under Economic Development Committee, that committee met and along with our staff recommend approval of financial assistance from the Facade Improvement Program for 1805 Dempster Street in an amount not to exceed $15,185. We ask your approval also for Resolution 51R13, which endorses the application of Autobarn Motors Limited for a 7B status designation for commercial development of the property located at 222 Hartree. This simply involves the city recommending the county's approval of this program for their taxes. Under the Rules Committee, we request, the Rules Committee met and requests that the council amend city council rules regarding citizen comment, and that letters submitted by citizens who are not present will be placed on the record as provided to the city clerk. The Mayor Tisdall has made the following recommendations for appointments: to the Age Friendly Task Force, Joanne Cromer; to the Mayor's Education Task Force, Dr. Merrill Irving, Dr. Michael Carr, Dr. Pete Bavis, Amadou Dram, Cecilla Smith, Jeff Cooney, Mayor's Education, Mayor's Education Task Force. Also, Senator Daniel Biss. The Plan Commission, she's recommending Terry Dubin and Colby Lewis. With that, Madam Mayor, I move the consent agenda.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. It's been moved and seconded to pass the consent agenda. Seeing no one wanting further discussion, City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
Alderman Burris. Yes. Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Aye. Alderman Nguyen. Yes. Alderman Wilson. Yes. Alderman Holmes. Yes. Alderman Tindem. Yes. Alderman Grover.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clerk.
You're welcome. 9-0.
9-0, the consent agenda passes. Alderman Rainey, Administration and Public Works is complete, I believe.
We completed our work.
Congratulations. Alderman Nguyen.
We had one item on P&D. It's P1, Resolution 64R13, extending time for the applicant to obtain a building permit to construct planned development located at 708 Church Street. I move approval.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. For the record, as a point of order, it is my ruling that this resolution must be approved by 6 votes. Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor, could our council advise me as to the vote required to overrule the decision of the chair?
Madam Mayor, Clerk Green, members of council, Grant Farrar, Corporation Counsel, with respect to a motion to appeal the ruling of the chair that requires a majority vote per council rule number 4.
Thank you. Alderman Grover.
Wait, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Rainey.
I would like to move to overrule the decision of our chair, Madam Mayor, based on the fact that there is no codification of this rule in our books. I have no idea if a vote of 5 will make this this motion a positive one or a negative one. I have no idea. I no longer can count, I realize. However, I think to establish this precedent on extensions is serious business and is wrong and has never been proposed to this council in all my years that a 2/3 requirement for a plain and simple extension is required. And therefore, for those of you who are for or against this particular proposal, and that is 708 Church Street. I would hope that you would look at this motion as having nothing to do with that proposal, and deal with it simply as a principled issue having no business being placed before us in terms of an extraordinary majority vote. So with that, Madam Mayor, I move to overrule you.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to overrule my ruling. And Alderman Grover, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I was hoping for a discussion on the point as to whether or not a majority or a supermajority was required on the request for an extension. It just seems to me there appears to be a difference between our attorney's recommendation and what our past practice has been. And I haven't been part of a vote on an extension of a planned development permit that has required or that we've expected there to be a supermajority vote. And I'm hoping for clarification only because I'm not sure I understand.
Well, I would agree with Alderman Rainey that it is a principled issue, and I would think that the principle was on my side. But this is a highly controversial issue in this community. It was highly controversial 5 years ago, and it still is today. 5 years ago, it took a 6-vote majority to win the issue, and I think that same majority is required because I think the seriousness of this decision is equally great. The property has been sitting for 5 years. To let it stagnate for another 3 is difficult for me to understand. And I think our attorney can weigh in on this as well as to why we need 6.
Madam Mayor, can I just respond to Alderman Grover? I think this is the perfect time to have this discussion. And in regards to your comments, we cannot willy-nilly add majority votes when we have controversial issues, because we have lots of controversial issues that require a majority vote. So that to me is probably the worst argument for a 2/3 vote, that it's controversial and et cetera,
There
et
is
cetera.
precedent. It took a 2/3 vote to get us here, and I think it should take a 2/3 vote for us to continue down this road.
I understand.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe, I think that what the mayor is saying is what my argument would be, which is that this PUD required a 2/3 majority to approve, and at that time, written into the PUD was the request for the 5-year extension at that point. So that originally required a 2/3 majority for that entire PUD. And I would say now this extension request for 3 years is an extension of that PUD. To me, it makes sense that a 2/3 majority would also be required for the extension. I think in other instances where we may have a PUD that doesn't require a 2/3 vote, then that's a different situation. But this one, because we have had other PUDs that don't require a supermajority, but those extensions didn't require a supermajority. Because this PUD required the supermajority because it was beyond, it requested beyond the maximum allowances, I think that the extension should also require the 2/3 majority, because this was all part of the original PUD. It included the 5-year extension request. I think that a further extension should also require a 2/3 majority. Otherwise, we're making a nullity of the original 2/3.
Do all PUDs require a 2/3 majority when they're originally passed?
No, that's only a PUD only requires a supermajority when it exceeds the zoning maximum allowances.
But anyone that does requires a supermajority. Anyone that exceeds, I mean, many PUDs do exceed.
And I would say, Alderman Rainey, that in that instances, or any instance where a supermajority is required for the original PUD, an extension should also require a supermajority, because otherwise then you're really defeating the whole point of a supermajority in the first place. I mean, we require it because the request is so extraordinary that what's in our ordinance says that what you need, therefore, because it's so extraordinary, is you need a supermajority of the council. If we don't follow through with that, then a simple majority now sort of nullifies what was required as a supermajority before.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I agree with Alderman Nguyen, and I remember sitting in the audience and listening to the discussion at the time, and my understanding was that that the 5 years really was put in as part of the supermajority vote and should be considered as an extension of that vote tonight. But I would like to hear from our Corporation Counsel.
Madam Mayor, members of council, one of the things that I'm struggling with right now is there is the policy question that's before this body. There's also the motion to overrule the chair. And it's important at this point and at this juncture to indicate and remind the council that a motion to overrule is an incidental motion to the main motion to approve. And so I think what's happening right now, that pursuant to the Council Rule 4 on motions to overrule, those motions are not debatable. But what's happening right now is in the context of the motion to overrule, where the council is debating the underlying issue. So at this junction, Madam Mayor, I think what I'd like to do is perhaps indicate that there may be a question of order presented here, whether this incidental motion to overrule is properly before the council. If the will of the council is to consider the underlying issues, then it's probably appropriate to get to that matter and defer ruling or hearing any more relative to the motion to overrule. Because strictly speaking,
I'll hold
that's
my motion to overrule, but I'm not going to withdraw it. Because the point of the motion is to get to the heart of the 2/3 versus majority. Because I don't want to overrule her.
I understand that, Alderman
if there's
Rainey.
a good reason for the 2/3 vote.
Absolutely, but just it's important to have a clean record right now.
I understand. So I will the seconder agree to hold? Okay, let's have the other discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey.
With respect to the underlying issues that are presented, staff was confronted with a very close question of law and a set of facts that are novel and really contextually different from anything that's different. And the simple fact of the matter, with respect to what has happened in other plan developments, what has happened with respect to other special uses and extensions, that's all relevant information, but in the determination of staff, that's not dispositive. Now, the code is very clear about a couple of things. The code is very clear that a special use typically does not last for more than a year unless it's a special extension, and the terms of which are fixed upon by the council. The code is also clear that special uses and plan developments are each considered on their own merits. So what that means in framing and informing staff's very careful consideration of this issue is, given the context, given the fact that the code is not silent, it indeed speaks to considering each special use and each plan development on its own, what happens in terms of a voting requirement on an extension that did require an affirmative vote in 2009, a 2/3 vote. And I think that everyone would agree that that ordinance would have never been approved but for that majority, that supermajority vote, but for that 6 votes. So really at that point, it became an issue of simple logic, mirroring the requirement of the ordinance and mirroring that in the resolution that's before the council tonight. The other step in the process was the risk management and the risk avoidance duties of the law department. We had to look at what came before, because past is always prologue. And we had to consider, in terms of the risk avoidance scenarios and the risk management scenarios, where would challenges be mounted? because it was quite clear to us, and you have materials in the packet. All of you on the dais have received communications. I've received communications. There are certain segments of the city that want to reopen this whole matter. Well, that's clearly, as a matter of law and a matter of legislation, inappropriate. The only thing that's properly before the council right now is the extension. Having said that, the issue was always at the forefront of our mind and staff's mind was, what does the extension require? And if the extension requires 5 votes, is there going to be a lawsuit? And I think it's quite clear that there will be litigation. Now, I'm not going to sit here tonight and speculate as to the merits, as to the causes of actions, as to the theories. But the simple fact of the matter is we have litigation that is certainly contemplated on that score. And we also have a possibility that the applicant could file litigation against the city. So we had to make a very careful, balanced approach, and that's the best contextual set of information and decision points that informed staff's recommendation that it required a 2/3 vote. The case law is all over the place in terms of deliberative actions by a deliberative body. There's probably 20 cases. I have 10 of them in front of me on my desk that could stand for the proposition that only 6 votes are required. There's probably some others that say, no, only 5 votes are necessary. At the end of the day, reasonable attorneys will disagree over points of law. What cannot be disagreed and what cannot be contested is the contextual basis that brought us to this point. So based upon the contextual basis, based upon the fact that the code is silent, we made the judgment call and the recommendation to the council as the legislative body to proceed with the action that's before you tonight, in the form of the action that's before you tonight.
Thank you, Alderman Grover.
I think then that I need help distinguishing this request for extension from the others that we have granted, for which I don't think we expected that it required an affirmative vote of 6 to approve.
You're
telling me that there's it's apples and oranges, or that there's no basis for comparing this to every previous decision on extension that we've made?
All we're simply saying is the fact that that issue did not come up in that context doesn't mean that we don't believe as staff that there is an issue on a going forward basis. And I'm putting it out there for this council to consider. A code amendment on this issue is definitely necessary. There has to be clarity and consistency.
We all agree.
And the fact that this issue has not been raised before by either staff, by my predecessor in this position, or by applicants, that's really immaterial, because again, we're dealing with the 4 corners of Ordinance 3208. We're dealing with a code that is clear on a couple of points, that each special use is considered on its own. So if you follow that line of logic, then the fact that this requires 6 votes is not an extraordinary departure. It's not outside the bounds of well-reasoned legal and factual circumstances presented in this case. It's a definite issue that needs to be addressed on a going forward basis. But given the but-for situation, that Ordinance 3208 would have never been approved but for the 2/3 vote, it was just an extension of logic and an extension of the context to recommend to this body that 2/3 vote would be necessary for an extension.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey.
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean that the other ordinance, that the original ordinance wouldn't have been approved but for a 2/3 vote. It's easier to get a majority vote. It would have been definitely approved with a majority vote. I will support 100% an ordinance. In fact, I will even refer it, that says in any case where a plan development got required a 2/3 vote for passage, that any extension of that ordinance requires a 2/3 passage. But we don't have that ordinance now. There is no amendment to the plan development ordinance that includes that. And we are simply making it up that this ordinance, this extension requires a 2/3. You can look back at any vote and say any alteration of that vote requires the same vote that required. But it's codified someplace. There is no codification of this requirement. I understand why you recommended it. I think you're the best city attorney we've ever had, and I'm not just trying to make your head big. I really believe that. But I think, and I understand why you're so cautious on this, but I think you're absolutely wrong on this point. Going forward, we've got to go to the rules, we've got to make this recommendation. It's got to be an ordinance. It's got to be an amendment. But it isn't, we're not there yet. And that's why I am challenging the ruling of the chair. I think she's the best mayor we ever had, too.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. City Attorney, do you agree that the mayor has the authority to make the recommendation?
I do. Under the Illinois compiled statutes, the municipal code specifically indicates that she has the power to recommend measures to the city. As the presiding officer of the council, Rule 14.4, she presides. Rule 1.63, she also presides under the city code. Council Rule 2.3, she determines all points of order. So she has the authority to opine that it requires a 2/3 vote. Having said that, Council Rule 4 provides that upon motion of an alderman, her ruling can be overruled, appealed, and overruled.
Okay, but it was staff's recommendation that a supermajority vote would be appropriate in this instance.
That is correct.
Thank you. Alderman Grover?
Still trying to figure this out. I think our code presumes, for the purpose of plan developments and approval, well, everything in our code presumes a simple majority to get something done, unless there is a specific exception that requires a supermajority. So for me, the presumption is in favor of a simple majority, a 5-4 affirmative vote to make something happen, unless there is I keep repeating myself, something that creates this exception, this supermajority requirement. That's where I am. And I am really hesitant to...
Well, I would say that 5 years makes for a supermajority requirement. Alderman Rainey. Oh, sorry. I can't get it. Don't touch it. All right. Does anyone want to discuss this further? Then Alderman Rainey.
I just want to say, and I know this is the first time that it's ever happened, and I don't care if I hope the vote isn't 8-1, but you know that this has nothing to do with you or my respect for you. This has to do with my concern that we're making I don't know, I guess we're making law where it doesn't exist right now. And I am absolutely supportive of a law that maybe should exist and will support the referral of this requirement to the Rules Committee or to whomever. Maybe the plan, this might even should go to the Plan Commission. I don't know.
Thank you. All right, don't touch your light. I'm turning it off here. Okay. All right, I believe we need to vote on Alderman Rainey's motion to overrule. She held it. All right, Alderman Rainey to unhold it. All right.
I'm going to move to overrule your ruling.
Okay.
The chair's ruling that this vote requires 2/3.
And you seconded it. All right. It's been moved and seconded to overrule my ruling that this vote requires a 2/3 vote. City Clerk, I think you can call the roll on this one.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes.
Alderman Burris? Yes. Alderman Fisk? Alderman Braithwaite?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
No.
Alderman Wilson? No. Alderman Holmes.
Yes.
Alderman Tindem.
Yes.
Alderman Grover.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.
6-3, the motion passes.
Okay, now we're back to the original motion. So we're back to the original motion.
We are back to the original motion minus the two-thirds requirement. Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to amend the original motion. I have some concerns. I would like to amend the 3 years to 1 year.
All right, is there a second?
My argument for that would be that in 1 year, all the issues could be clarified, and I would like to also include that the developer be in a position to describe to us the planned project.
They already have.
If there, for example, if perhaps there aren't going to be so many units, and if there are going to be offices, if there is going to be retail, just to give us the flavor of the project that he's planning, if he can do a project. I don't know if he can or not. I think the reason for the extension was to determine whether or not a project could be done. And I think, given the fairness of the issue, that is an important opportunity. I know everybody's very concerned about dragging this out, so let's see what can happen in a year, and hopefully, if anything can happen, I think we can know about it within that period of time.
Well, maybe by the time a year is out, we would have a two-thirds requirement for extension.
For the next extension, yes, I'll support it.
Okay. Alderman Fisk.
Well, I think giving a year extension in order to give the developer time to amend his project is just ludicrous.
I don't know if he's going to amend. Just
Okay,
tell us something.
if you're opining that he might possibly do that, and if that's the case, it should go back to the Plan Commission, and we should turn it down right now and send him back to the Plan Commission so that we can. All right, you made it up. I'm taking that as. I don't know any other reason that we would give him a year, but what's before us right now, and all the rest of you have been arguing this, is voting on the extension. And the extension application is for 3 years, and I would encourage everyone to turn that down. I think the mayor is absolutely correct. They've already had an extension. They've had a 4-year extension. So that's bringing it to a total of 5 years, and giving them 3 more years is absolutely the wrong thing to do. The points raised by the citizens who were speaking is that it's going to be harmful to the future developments that might possibly be interested in coming to the table within that time period. Detrimental to them, detrimental to the professionals who live in or who work in the building, detrimental to the retail that surrounds the building, detrimental to the downtown. It's an outdated project. We should say no to it when we should not be using 1 year to massage the project into something that might possibly be acceptable to a few more people on the city council. It's absolutely the wrong project. We should start over again.
Thank you. Alderman Burris.
Can we ask the developer if a 1-year extension would be acceptable to them? That's my first question. And my second question, and I know that Alderman Grover had asked for this a while ago, and I'm not sure who sent us the information. It might have been you, Grant, and if it's not, you can tell me there was someone else. A list of the extensions that have been granted to the other PUDs. I know that there have been several with 3-year extensions and then 2 3-year extensions. Did you send us that? I just can't remember. I apologize.
I believe Director Munzer sent that along. So.
Okay. And does anybody have that in front of them? I apologize again for not having it. Mr. Munzer, while there you are in the back.
Alderman Burris.
Thank you. Sorry for not remembering who sent what.
That's all right. Were you referring to the average time of the extension or the actual list?
The actual list.
Because I'm not sure if I need to go back and look at the actual list. I did have staff prepare on the fly, if you will, a list.
I know.
I need to look at that to make sure that it's absolutely every PD. I mean, we did it very quickly.
Great.
But the average extension time for all those PDs, there were 36. No, there were 12 were granted extensions, which was 36% of that original number from 2003 to 2008. So a little bit more than a third. And the average extension time from those was 2 years.
Okay, so from 2008 till now?
From 2003 to 2008, which was 22.
Okay, but that's irrelevant because we're talking about the crash. From 2008 till now, then do we know what the average time was in the extension?
The average extension for that original lot of PDs was 2 years.
No, from 2008. So from what was?
Well, there's only 2 new PDs.
Okay.
We looked from 2009. But there were only
Okay.
2 new PDs since then. They're the Walgreens and the Trader Joe's, so they've been built.
Those were new ones.
Correct.
So
You're talking about
I'm talking about Central Street,
Again, the average was 2 years.
Dempster,
The bank building.
Emerson.
Orrington.
Mhm.
Yep.
They varied, and some of them were for more than just, some of them were for other reasons, and some of them were simply extensions, like Alderman Rainey and I were previously talking about, that they just varied.
Okay, I think I remember reading the list differently. So
Okay.
thank you. We're going to hear from the developer, and I just want to read the list.
Alderman Burris, I think I may have found the email. It was to Alderman Grover on November 11th. 22 PDs were approved between 2003, 2008. 36% were granted extensions for various reasons. Of the 12 extension, only 1 is yet to be completed. Is that the email you're thinking of? Okay.
Would you just
I'd be happy to forward it to the council. And
Again, I apologize for not having it in front of me right in a second.
No problem.
I couldn't even find the agenda.
To answer your question, Alderman Burris, yes, I think we asked for 3 years. I think one of the concerns I heard from the P&D Commission was the concerns about the length of time as would relate to its impact on the existing tenants in the building and on the existing other developments. And I think a shorter term of time will address that, and I think we can live with that 1 year.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey.
I pass. I'm sorry.
Alderman Grover.
My light again.
What do we hope and expect will happen in the next year? Mr. Anderson, and what would we lose in denying the request for the extension?
Okay, I think if you lose, what we have right now is we have the framework of a PD, and consistent with other PDs that have been extended, they have had to make adjustments so that something could happen on those sites. For instance, the Bob King and Steve Fifield development up on Emerson, Central Street, et cetera. We would take the same course of action where any adjustments that we made would come back to you, something that we could do within that 1 year time frame. Now, the advantage to that is that there already is a PD in place. It establishes a framework and it establishes a point of reference going forward. If you say, let's deny this extension, everything goes back to square one. It's a D3 zoning in a very critical and pivotal central block in your downtown, and any kind of action that requires a PD will go to the 1.5 to 2 years, whatever it takes to get done, and it'll take a longer period of time to get something happening on that block. So I think this is a quicker course of action to make development happen in that block downtown, Evanston.
Would you stay interested in the property and in undertaking a project there?
No, I will not without the extension.
Without the extension. And would you be looking for significant, substantial changes to the PD within the year? Or would you be looking to keep it within generally the same framework so that it wouldn't be kick back to Plan Commission?
I think we would keep it within the same framework. There would be adjustments, I think, to address the market, and I think we can get to that in the first quarter of 2014 and react quickly, but we can't do that without an extension.
Would you be looking one of the adjustments to convert this from an ownership product to a rental product?
We have looked at that option, and we've also looked at the potential of ownership product. It may be a mix, but I don't want to come back here and actually vet in public what something would be when we really want to come back with a concise plan that's well developed that addresses the adjustments clearly and concisely so that you can see what we're proposing.
So in your estimation, what does the city gain by giving you a one-year extension?
It gains the possibility of a project much earlier than if you deny the extension on a critical block in your downtown that would be additive to the value of property taxes and base in City of Evanston, also I think to the life of the city, of the urban core of your downtown.
What about those provisions of the PD ordinance that have gone stale? That is, they're no longer relevant because certain aspects of our downtown have been addressed by the city that were part of the original agreement. How would we?
I think it would have to be it would have to be looked at on the value of its merits. Like I said, there are other projects that have been extended, and at that point in time, they've been looked at, and the adjustments have been looked at in light of the current situation. And I think we'd ask for the same, and I think the council would have the opportunity to weigh in on the same.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, for me, it is a lot of its timing. And if we do look at the plan development ordinance, adjustments can be made, but there are different types. For example, the minor adjustments can be done without going back to the Plan Commission, but those are adjustments that are done during the build-out of the project. We're not building out the project. The major adjustments require going to the Plan Commission. And the ordinance specifically states no amendment shall be made in the construction, development, or use of a plan development without a new application. So that's really kind of the core of my concern. 3 years or 1 year, it's going to end up back in that process. And the 3 year or the 1 year delay is just delaying it, putting it back into the process. So if we wait a year, then get in front of the Plan Commission, it's another year lost, and it's still that year, 2 year process of being vetted and going through that because we're not in the build out of the project. So I just don't see how that, to answer, in my estimation, Alderman Grover, I don't see where we pick up any probable benefit in that. Do I want to put pressure on the developer? Yes, I do want to put pressure on the developer because there was a commitment and the commitment didn't get met. Other circumstances, people who've asked, entities that have asked for extensions have come to us with drawings or plans or an indication, a specific indication of what they want to do. And unfortunately, we don't have that here. I understand that it's possibly a fluid situation or whatever, but I just have very strong reservations and don't feel comfortable pushing it out any further.
Thank you. Alderman Nguyen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think some of what Alderman Wilson is saying is what my argument would be as well. I think that given the choice, well, first of all, our Plan Commission has possibly 2 PUDs coming before it, but it's not nearly as busy as it was back in 2008. We've had 2 PUDs come through just in the last 2 years, Trader Joe's and then the Walgreens. They both came through. They both proceeded through very rapidly because the Plan Commission isn't busy right now. I think so I don't necessarily think we would lose time if we simply said denied the extension. It would send them back to the drawing board. But if they have to go back to the drawing board to make adjustments to this, I think what they're doing is taking an outdated plan and trying to shave parts of it off. I think ultimately that will cause more community controversy and lengthen the time that they would have to be before the Plan Commission or in front of us. I think coming to us with a brand-new idea for a development on this critical block in our downtown, which ultimately will be developed, will proceed actually more rapidly than having them go back and try and fit something in underneath the requirements that they have now and adjust it. Then we're not really getting a whole idea. What we're getting is something that's been a sort of patchwork together. I think it would be much better to say very cleanly tonight, deny the extension, go back to the drawing board, come back to us. We realize this is a critical block. We want economic development in our downtown, but we don't want something that's been chopped and pieced together in order to fit under the requirements.
Thank you. Alderman Burris.
Thank you. I believe that the developer would like to say something else. I also wanted to say, if this ends up coming back as partially rental, we also need to relook at the affordable housing portion of the benefits, because currently the affordable housing piece only refers to for sale units. So when we're looking at that, that needs to be done. I also just, as many, and I apologize, as many of you know, I have no love for this development at all. Probably one of the people that fought most against the development when I was on the Plan Commission. But I do believe that Focus Development did a great service at taking their time with 1717 Ridge, and it's part of the reason why they haven't been able to move forward on this project. And I understand, to go back to the Plan Commission, I think Alderman Nguyen is maybe sugarcoating it a little bit about the process of starting from scratch versus what we did for Mr. King, where we allowed Mr. King to go and make substantial revisions to Emerson. And I think we should allow similar concessions to Focus Development, despite my not loving your project. And sorry, Mr. Riefman, go ahead.
Thank you, Alderman Burris. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So that is one of my concerns about this, is that if we approved and at least decided that the Bob King project didn't need to go back to the Plan Commission, then the same argument is going to be made here that this doesn't have to go back to the Plan Commission. So suddenly we can have condos, we can have rental, we can have less retail, we can have all sorts of changes, and it's not going back to the Plan Commission. So everyone will just have to show up here at City Council. They will not have an opportunity to weigh in at the Plan Commission during the time when these issues are normally discussed thoroughly. They will have very, very little input into the process. I was extremely disappointed because I felt I read exactly what Alderman Wilson just referred to into the record about substantial changes or minor changes, and it was my opinion that the Bob King project should have gone back to the Plan Commission. That decision is already made, and I can hear the echo of this coming down the road of after a year, this doesn't need to go to the Plan Commission again. Again, this project is outdated. This project is not relevant to all of the strategies that we've been working on, the economic development strategies, the economic development goals. This building does not represent them. And frankly, the prospect of a rental building in the center of our downtown is absolutely inconsistent with all the work that we've done over the past 4 years on the council, all the efforts that we've put in. We can get a better building. We should get a better building. We only have one site in the center of our downtown, and this is it, and it should be the right one. And what we're doing here tonight is literally just patching it together, and that's absolutely the wrong thing for Evanston's future.
Thank you. Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 1700 Central Street project, when it was originally approved as a planned development, was a condominium project. And the building that we have now, which is a lovely building, is a rental, an apartment building. It's got a different exterior than was originally proposed. It has more units and less parking. On the other hand, it's a great building, entirely fitting with the neighborhood. The retail will be coming in to the first floor there. It's close to transit, so in the 5 years that elapsed between the approval of that PD and when the building got built, we had a different perspective on transit-oriented development, and it didn't make sense to have the high number of parking spaces that building required given its location. So that was an example of a project that didn't go back to the Plan Commission between approval of the PD and when it actually pulled construction permits. That one turned out okay. I think it turned out just fine.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
You're done. Alderman Rainey.
Well, and within moments, it seems, of approving the King project, the bulldozers arrived, knocked down the building, put a hole there, started building. The cranes are out there. What is the point of? I mean, we are not developers. We are not architects. We have no business designing a building. When they have a project, if the year can produce a project, our staff will tell us whether or not it is too beyond the agreement of the original plan development. Tim Anderson is not going to build an obsolete building. Don't worry about it. That's just not going to happen. You cannot say it's not going to be the best building in town. How can you dare say that? You don't know that. You just don't know that, Alderman Fisk. Don't wish it. I hope it is the best darn building that this city ever oversaw the building of. You just can't say that. And what's wrong if rentals are in? Rentals are in. The way developers are titling buildings now, 415 Howard, there was an absolute requirement that be a rental building. Not only that it be a rental building, but that it not be low income, that it not be subsidized, that it not be in any way low and moderate income. In other words, the Brinshaw model. That it be deluxe Class A apartment building. That building was built legally as a condominium, so that at some point down the road, when they decide that condominiums are back, there won't have to be a conversion of the property. It already is a condominium, but it is a rental. So, there are some. I just don't think that we're the people who are going to design this. They're going to come to us with a project. It's either going to meet the plan development or it's not. You keep saying it's outdated. Yeah, they're going to bring it up to date. That's what we're giving them a year to show us if they can do. Why would you object to that?
Alderman Rainey, we're saturated on condominium development. We're saturated on rental. We need this project was approved with the most extraordinary allowances that any of us have ever seen, either on the council or off the council. Most of those have evaporated right now. The public benefits to the city mostly have evaporated right now. So what you're doing is you're giving the developer a pass on that, saying, oh, okay, all of those benefits, it doesn't make any difference. We're still going to give you time to build a building that is probably irrelevant right now. We've just built however many units of rental housing in or near the downtown. We are saturated on them. We need to have a building that is forward-thinking, not just sticking a shovel in the ground and start a development. I don't know that for 100% positive, but I can tell you that we're overbuilt on rental and we're overbuilt on condominiums. And if you look at any of the real estate records that are out there right now, they will tell you the same thing.
I don't know if you remember when 807 Davis was getting ready to be built.
I do.
The outcry of people, this is a horrible building, it's a massive piece of junk, da-da-da. I mean, it's the same thing. Every time a new building gets built, the people
No,
next door...
it's not exactly the same thing.
Okay,
This is
hold
different.
on, everyone.
There's always a controversy about the next building being built in this
There may
town.
be a
Always.
controversy, but never of a building this size.
Alderman Fisk and Alderman Rainey.
I'm sorry,
It is
Madam.
past 11 at night, and we're starting to lose it. I have lights on for 4 more people who wish to speak to this, and we have an executive session after this, so I'm hoping that people will come up with concluding comments. Alderman Nguyen.
My quick response was on both of those. I'm referring back to what Alderman Grover was talking about with the Bob Horn project on Central Street and Bob King's project. Neither of those required a supermajority when they first came through, and both of those are, especially the one on Central Street, is very much similar to the building that was originally proposed. So in that sense, I think that this is very different. I mean, they're telling us that they're not sure what they're going to come back with. Then let's have them start fresh.
Thank you. Alderman Burris.
Yeah, actually, the Central Street development is vastly different what was built than was originally proposed. Extremely different, actually. I was on the Plan Commission at the time, so it's actually night and day from what's currently there. Just to clarify, so we can just go back and look at the record. That's fact. As far as 1717 Ridge, which is rental, I believe it's primarily full now. And Alderman Braithwaite, I think that you told me that earlier today. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, Alderman Burris, that's
Thank
correct.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Well, I think we've digressed into a lot of conversation about the building itself, but I would just want to get back to the time issue again. Part of what made this, in some people's view, a good deal for the city was the benefits that were going to be realized in the short term. They were given extraordinary relief as far as the zoning code is concerned. Huge allowances on height, parking allowances, floor area ratio, huge allowances. But with that went the idea that these were people who were going to come in and do it. Alderman Rainey, like you said, the other developer came in and got the bulldozers going. This was going to happen. This was going to get done. This was going to benefit the TIF. It was going to benefit the Fountain Plaza. It was going to provide all of these benefits pretty much right away. And it didn't. And instead, the TIF has suffered, the neighborhood suffered, and it's time to get it back to the planning stage and get a plan together that fits with the overall view of downtown, I think.
Thank you. Alderman Grover.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Notwithstanding focused developments, lovely work at 1717 Ridge, which by all accounts is a really great building. And the applicant here, though, has had obligations to us for 5 years on 708 Church. And it's still, for me, it's the lapse of 5 years. While other projects have proceeded, other projects have been completed, that I think is the hardest for me to wrap my head around is it's not an easy one.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
Well, I think Alderman Wilson made a statement that the TIF has suffered because of this. What do you mean by that? This TIF has never suffered. It's not suffering. Not only that, but when this building is built, I am certain the school districts are going to be far happier that the building's not in a TIF, because they will then be the recipient of all the excess tax that comes in, as opposed to it being piled into the increment. I don't think it's fair to make those kind of comments. The TIF is not suffering.
Would you like me to clarify?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because the increment wasn't realized sooner. Like I said, the extraordinary relief was given to a project that was expected to get going. It didn't get going, and the increment hasn't materialized yet. It'll be great when the project, when a project and the property is developed and we have that increase in the tax base. But that's what I'm saying. Let's get it going. Let's get it back to planning, and let's get something happening instead of waiting another year.
Let's give it a year, and if it can't do it, let's kill it.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes?
Well, hindsight is always 20/20, and if we had been thinking before, I'm sure we would have had different thoughts when this was first before the preceding council. I think that I was very concerned about 3 years, and I've been mulling that around in my head. I'm much more comfortable with giving them 1 year because I think that if it can be done, if they're going to come back with something, they can do it in a year. So I would certainly, somebody said I was on the fence. I guess I was on the fence because I was jumping back and forth in terms of I want to see development in downtown Evanston. I think we need it. And I'm always concerned about that because of the property taxes of the folk in my ward, because taxes keep going up. And so the more development we get, I know that that's going to mean less property taxes for the individual residents. So I am certainly not opposed to the project proceeding if they can do it, but I wasn't comfortable with 3 years. But I certainly can support 1 year. And as Alderman Rainey just said, either they come back with something and it works, or if we kill it. It's as simple as that. And I would like to do that more so in 1 year so that it's still on this watch rather than going to 2016 when it'll be someone else's watch, because I'd like to be responsible for this. It started when we, some of us, 3 of us anyway, were on the council when this happened. So there's some responsibility there. I think that, we can talk it to death, and we can just go ahead and vote and do what needs to be done. And I know that it was controversial, and Madam Mayor, you're absolutely right. I remember sitting through hours and hours and hours of listening to residents, listening to the developer, listening to other developers talk about how difficult it is to do business in Evanston. All of those kinds of pieces have gone into this. And I think that we have to sometimes bite the bullet and do just what's right. And I think that if we have, and I understand council saying, our legal counsel stating that each project stands on its own, and I understand that. But when we make exceptions, I have real issues with that. I'd like for us to always be able to sort of follow a line in terms of when we're making decisions, that we're being fair and equal. And so I'll just simply say that I would not support 3 years, but I certainly could support 1 year.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to follow up with Alderman Holmes in the second ward, we have the same concerns about the need to increase our tax base. But having said that, this evening 2 properties have been referenced that were both second ward projects, both the 1717 Ridge and also the Bob King process. And unfortunately, I wasn't a part of council to be a part of the larger discussion, but I can tell you that I've worked very closely with Focus Development coming on council with the Sienna project. And I can also tell you the first meeting that we had with neighbors, there were probably more neighbors at that Sienna meeting than are here tonight. And so what I can tell you is that what started with a lot of issues, threats of lawsuit with the ADA compliance, Focus Development really did a good job working directly with our residents at Sienna. answering all the concerns that they had. And, you know, I'm proud to say that when I started, there was a big hole in the ground that residents complained about, and now there's a successful, wonderful building there where there are no complaints. And so I'm confident that whatever issues that are there with the current residents over the years, that they'll be able to work it out. I definitely feel comfortable voting for the year extension versus the 3 years, so I appreciate Alderman Rainey's referral. And yeah, I'm just ready to vote.
Thank you. And that will segue right into, it's been moved and seconded to approve this proposal with a 1-year extension. City Clerk, would you call the roll? And it was seconded, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Braithwaite. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burris. Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Holmes.
Yes.
Alderman Tindem.
No.
Alderman Grover. No. 3, 4, 5. 5 to 4 against.
5 to 4, the motion does not pass. I believe we are at call of the wards, beginning with Alderman Rainey.
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Burris. Thank you. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you for the good discussion tonight. To all of the First Warders who are here this evening, I want to remind you that the next First Ward meeting is Tuesday, December 3rd at the library. I want you all to be there, and from 7 to 9 p.m. And happy Hanukkah and all that good stuff.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have two quick, one reference and then a referral. The first reference, and I don't know if Janad Risky has left already, but, you know, like many of you, I've listened to Janad come, you know, meeting after meeting, sharing thoughts and opinions on different projects, and sometimes I challenge myself to filter to find the facts. So one of the questions that, or one of the recommendations that I'm making, Madam Mayor, is that you reach out to Janad and possibly appoint him to the Utilities Commission. I've read through that online, and I think that that may be a really good outlet for him to have those discussions. And if I paid attention to what's online, it looks like someone's going to be up for their on the committee. I think it's February 22nd of next year. So anyway, that's my reference. The other,
I don't think you can make a reference as to my appointments. I think those are mine.
Okay.
Nice try, though,
I
Peter.
And switching gears to something more serious, and I've passed a letter down on the dais. We've had a significant talk about development. Over the past month, we've had conversations on how we treat developers, and I'm really, with a lot of emotions, just frustrated and quite frankly very embarrassed by this letter that I just received from Mr. King. We've had a number of discussions this year. I think that we should be thankful to that King project for tipping us over our budget in terms of the surplus. And again, I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I do want to highlight some things for the council. Back in July 18th, Bob King closed on his property on 1890 Maple, the development. During that process, when it was time to purchase his transfer tax for $109 million, it was discovered that he had a water bill for $170, and then there was a vacant building fine. And part of the reaction from Mr. King is that the city staff never presented him with a notice. And I think it's safe to say that when you look at a $2,400 fine versus what adds up to when the total project is complete, not including the tax revenue, that you're looking at a $1.6 million contribution to the city budget. And I need not remind you, but it's here in front of you, that Bob King's property has already contributed $200,000 to the affordable housing. And with my referral, I'd like to know how many other developers have contributed to the Affordable Housing Fund within the last 3 years. He's also contributed $150,000 to the traffic improvement fees. He's paid $68,374 worth of transfer taxes. And of the $1.1 million in projected building permits, he's paid $103,000. He's paid an additional $52,000 of $92,000 for fence sidewalk demolition fees. And in addition to that, he's also paid $14,000, $381 for tree replacement fee, which I haven't even heard of since I've been on council. So my point is, I've had this discussion with our city manager and staff. Again, I just think it's really poor business and embarrassing, and I can't say that enough. And so I would like to make a reference to Administration and Public Works that our city manager come with. He's already indicated that we're going to send a denial letter to Bob King. I'd like to see evidence that our city staff did their job and did properly notify Mr. King. I'd also like to know how many vacant buildings in similar size that we have currently in the city. And I'd also like to see if there have been any additional fines like this. I compare this to the conversation that we had regarding the parking garage matter, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Reefman left. But again, that was a very simple issue that could have been taken care of administratively, that worked out in their favor, but again, at the expense of the project. And I don't know how much Mr. Reefman had to, whatever his compensation was, but I hope that we're able to solve this in Administrative and Public Works versus having to go an additional route. So,
is your referral to make changes to the vacant building fine, or simply not to have it apply to Mr. King?
I would simply like to have it voted on whether the fine is paid or waived. So I trust our staff can bring it back to AP&W with something that we can vote on, because it's been clear to me that he's going to be issued a denial letter. But I think it's important that we look at the criteria, so I am asking for the proof.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
Well, quite honestly, I've always thought he was singled out. But having said that, I too have asked the city manager for a list of all commercial vacant buildings, the charges assigned to those buildings, the revenue collected from them, the revenue not collected from them, and any fines or fees associated with their not paying the building fee. To me, when I heard they went to the clerk's office, who is only doing what the clerk is supposed to be doing, by the way, and was denied the sale of stamps for this multi-million-dollar project because of a water bill that had already been paid, and which now the money has been refunded, and a fine that, I swear to God, they claim on a stack of Bibles they never were notified of this fee. And I am wondering, have we been sending vacant building notices to vacant buildings? That's what I'm wondering.
And Alderman
Maybe
Rainey,
not.
And the notices that were sent to Mr. King were sent to the address on this letter, 20 North Wacker Drive.
They were.
So we'll provide that. I'll also, and this is obviously difficult to understand which fines you enforce, which fines you don't enforce. So I'll ask the council for direction as to what determination of how you enforce which fines.
Well, I think if Administration Public Works takes a vote to delete this fine, we should be able to delete a fine.
Thank you. Alderman Nguyen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a bit of a change of subject. The mayor and I were at a wonderful showing of an amazing film yesterday afternoon at Lake Street Church. It's called Inequality for All. It stars Robert Reich.
Does star him.
Former Secretary of Labor. The room was packed. I think maybe 300 or 400 people. They had to turn people away. It was sponsored by, I believe, the Peace and Justice Committee of both Lake Street Church, the Unitarian Church, and JRC. Really, really interesting discussion about the growing gap between the wealthy and the poor, and what it means for our country, and how desperately we need to fix that. So if any of you get an opportunity to see it, or if it turns up online, it was just released in September. I really urge all of you to see it. It's called Inequality for All, starring Robert Reich. And happy Thanksgiving and happy Hanukkah.
Alderman Braithwaite, did you have something?
Oh, sorry. I want to end on a positive note, and this is this Saturday, November 30th. A wonderful resident of Evanston who owns his business in the 2nd Ward. His name is Sam McKinley. You all may know Sam. Most recently, he was the resident who stepped up several years ago when there was a concern about taking away the roller skating at Fleetwood Jourdain. And so that's just a mere snapshot of the generosity that Sam has done in town for years. So myself, the mayor, former Mayor Lorraine Morton, Honorable Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste, Alderman Dolores Holmes, and Hecky Powell, as well as Leon Robinson, will be doing a special street naming ceremony for him inside. So it's a little bit out of the ordinary, but with the help of the staff, and I want to specifically thank Joe McCrae, Petra Belcher, and also Suzette Robinson. We're going to be able to celebrate some of his contributions. I think it's just so important to tell people when. So it's Saturday, November 30th, 12:30 to 2:30, and it's going to be at the Levy Center, and I'll make sure that everyone gets an invitation if you're able to attend. We're working really hard. Great question. Yeah, we're working very hard to get him there.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson?
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes?
Alderman Holmes.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Alderman Tandem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I have, as the only Jew on council, I have to say I'd like everyone to enjoy this special Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgivnica. And for those of you who don't know, it happens only every 7,000 years. So it's time to get out and celebrate this one because you never know. And if anyone has any tips for me, I'm working on my turkey menorah. I've been told it's called a menorca, a menorky. But actually, I'd be open to other motifs, maybe something dairy rather than turkey. So let me know. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Grover?
I have some Thanksgiving applesauce for you. Oh. Yes. Thank you to Karen Hawk and the staff of the Levy Center and the Evanston Children's Theater for a really wonderful performance of The Never-Ending Story this weekend. 2 casts, probably 75 actors among the 2 casts. And it was really, I think, the best yet. And so I should have told you about it before the performance, but now it's over. But it was well done and well managed. So thank you to the Levy Center staff and Karen Hawk for it. And Donnie, the director, whose last name I don't remember.
Thank you very much. Alderman Wilson, do you have a motion for us?
I do. Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, ILCS 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding collective bargaining, real estate, and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in an executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2A, C2, C5, C6, and C21.
All in favor say aye.